Your college football team is probably in contention for a playoff bid or headed toward a New Year's Six bowl game or has a longstanding head coach, or you're probably looking for a head coach because yours just left or got fired. Because once the carousel starts, it keeps going. Because think about it. One coach leaves a program, goes to another program, that leaves open another spot. And so it continues and continues and continues. And this is what we've got at the end of each and every college football season. So let's kick back and enjoy it right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you all being here on a Monday night, which is typically open for the top 25. That actually makes sense, reaction show. And so if you've got anything to add here in regards to the top 25 that I release each and every week, that is the one that makes sense. Please leave your comments and your questions about that. Call the show, most notably, to talk to me about my top 25. Again, that actually makes sense. It's championship week. We're going to cover championship week. We're going to preview every championship game right here at the Voice of College Football, not just live with you. We're going to post videos on every conference championship, all 5 majors, plus the 5 group of 5 conference championship games as well, which gets started on Friday with the MAC, and we get the Pac-12 going on Friday as well. And again, we are going to preview all of them at least once, if not multiple times, multiple angles right here at the Voice of College Football. Amazon, man, you know, the only time that name usually comes out of my mouth is right here. I've never said Amazon so many times, but I'm going to keep saying it because we're during the Christmas season right now. So you're shopping and you're online shopping. If you're anything like me, you know, you ditched going out to malls a long time ago. So you're online shopping. And when you typically do, where's the place you can get everything? Pretty much Amazon. So when you're on Amazon, please use the link that we provide in the description section of all the videos right here at the Voice of College Football, because you are not only getting your Christmas gifts, but you're supporting the Voice of College Football without spending 1 penny. Same shopping experience. You don't spend 1 penny. Auburn has been looking for a football coach. They've had one on the sideline in an interim status here over the last few weeks. One at Cadillac Williams, who has garnished all sorts of support along the Auburn football community. But Hugh Freeze is the name that we're hearing that has been announced as the new head coach of the Auburn Tigers. And here to talk about it, we got Kyle Loomis on the line from E2C Network. So go to E2C Network right here on YouTube for Auburn football, basketball, athletics, and family community content all about Auburn University. Kyle, we appreciate you stopping by.
I am always appreciative of you allowing me to be here and talk about this crazy little thing we call the Auburn family. And boy, is it a crazy time right now. I mean, it's getting cold out for everybody, but it's getting really cold in Auburn, Alabama because of one Hugh Freeze. So throw out your freeze warning jokes and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be interesting. And I think last time we talked, we were talking a lot about Lane Kiffin, and that turned very quickly after our conversation. But here we are, head coach of the Auburn Tigers, the Hugh Freeze.
Ever since Hugh Freeze coached at Ole Miss, and we know what happened there, practically every SEC opening has been linked to Hugh Freeze. So obviously there is attraction out there for his coaching abilities. This has been, though, the one that has pulled through and been the one that where the rumors have been more than that. And we now know that this is confirmed. So your initial response to Hugh Freeze being Auburn's next head coach?
My initial response is one of cautious optimism for a variety of reasons. One, because the name we heard for the longest time was Lane Kiffin. It was his job to pretty much say whether he wanted or not, whether you believe that or subscribe to that. That's really a moot point at this point. But for me, it's about cautious optimism. I'm an optimistic person by nature. I choose to kind of live my life that way because I think it's just more meaningful. So let's talk about the bad stuff a little bit, not to get into the details unless we want to about what happened at Ole Miss, the history there. And there's some things out there as well that are, you know, there are allegations about things that he has and hasn't said on social media. There's a lot of questions character-wise about Hugh Freeze and whether he's said the things that he needs to say, done the things that he needs to do, that he has changed. I'm not the person to sit here and tell you that that has happened. What I can tell you is there are a lot of Auburn people that are concerned about that. And I think rightfully so. But what I don't want to have happen here is the complete dismissal of a man for the opportunity to change, the opportunity to be able to show that he has, changed his life, and then be able to still do what we've known Hugh Freeze to do on the field. Because you said it, every coaching search that comes up over the last few years, his name has at least popped up in it. And there's a reason for that. He's a great offensive mind. He's had a pretty good track record in terms of success everywhere he's went. But he's also turned players like Malik Willis, who Auburn wasn't able to utilize or didn't have the opportunity to utilize that time, into great NFL talents. So there's a lot of things to like about the Hugh Freeze hire. There's also a lot of things to have some really cautious degrees of optimism about, just to be on the safe side, to make sure the problems of his past do not rear its ugly head again.
Yeah, and that I would think would have been a vetting out process between the administration there and Hugh Freeze in regards to him proving to a certain extent or giving firm evidence to the changes that he's made in his own life. And for anybody out there that is in totally up on that situation, we're not going to run through the entire thing, but basically recruiting violations at Ole Miss. And in the process of the NCAA investigating recruiting violations coming across personal, transgressions within his family. Mm-hmm. And obviously had to be dismissed there at Ole Miss, and has done a fine job on the football field at Liberty. And as far as I know, there haven't been any other further issues that have been substantiated or confirmed in any way. So I am certainly one that believes that people should be given second chances. We all need second chances in life, and third and fourth chances even. Now, that doesn't mean you make a bad hire or you risk,
right,
a corporation, organization, a football program, whatever the case might be, to put it in hands of somebody who has not righted their ways. But and that's where we stand right now with Hugh Freeze. But we do have the evidence of him coaching now 3 seasons at Liberty. Yeah. And turning around that football program, and again, no evidence of any further wrongdoing there. But so he's putting together a staff. Obviously, that's job number one. Is it's almost as important as the head coach is.
Oh yeah,
how he surrounds himself with fine talented offensive and defensive coordinator. In particular, we understand Barry Odom. Saw your tweet on that. Yep. Barry Odom being named the defensive coordinator, of course, former Missouri head coach before Eli Drinkwitz.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's initial speculation right now. Those from, we all have the quote unquote sources. There is someone that I spoke to that tells me to pay attention to that name. We're in the very early process of this. The only thing that you can confirm at this moment is that Coach Cadillac Williams, who's been the interim, will be given the opportunity to be part of this staff. That's already been reported out there. And frankly, that is the biggest thing that Coach Hugh Freeze could do right now to start to garner some of that cautious support that's waning out there right now, is to get Cadillac on the staff officially. It's being reported that he will have the opportunity to retain, but obviously Cadillac's got to decide he wants to be part of the staff. And mind you, that'll be 3 different coaching staffs: Coach Malzahn, Coach Harsin, and potentially Hugh Freeze, that he will have been retained over. And that's a pretty incredible feat in my book, and shows you the importance of him there. But I think if you look at a Barry Odom, it's kind of one of those, to me, it feels like a lot like the Derek Mason hire, where it was the obvious big name out there for a position like a DC. At the time, it seemed really good. If you look at Auburn's history with Derek Mason at DC, not so good. And I'm pretty sure he had a pretty rough time out of Oklahoma State with not being able to stop some offenses out there. So I'm also a little bit cautiously optimistic if that is the case as well. There's a lot of other Auburn names out there. When I say Auburn names, Auburn ties. There's a guy by the name of Travis Williams down at UCF with a old head coach, Gus Malzahn, right now, who's getting his first opportunity to be a DC down there. And by all, intents and purposes, seems to be having a decent year. I haven't followed UCF all that much, but I don't see them giving up an exorbitant amount of points every single game. So that's more of an emotional type of hire. If a Travis Williams gets brought in, it's not that I think you should fill your staff with a bunch of Auburn players, but I think when you come to a place like Auburn, you need a few of those guys. Harsin did a good job in having a guy on the offense and the defense and Cadillac and Zach. So if you're going to retain Cadillac as part of your offensive staff, that box is checked. I wonder if he'll keep a guy like Zach Etheridge on the staff in his current position as a DB coach, maybe promotion as well. That's just pure speculation on my part. Really, the opportunities abound right now, but just an interesting name to kind of keep an eye on, see where it goes, maybe a Barry Odom.
Got Kyle Loomis on the line from E2C Network. If you're an Auburn football fan, you obviously have to be there. But get this, it's not just about Auburn football. It's not just about Auburn basketball and football. It's not just about athletics. It's about the Auburn community, the Auburn family, and all events and everything going on there on the Plains. We appreciate Kyle being here. When there is such a strong offensive mind who is then named the head coach,
right?
You wonder, is there going to be an offensive coordinator? Is he going to call his own plays? Is that offensive coordinator going to be more of a support person in terms of bouncing around ideas and maybe coordinating the offenses, but not calling the plays on Saturday? That's kind of a dynamic when you have a head coach who's so strong on one side of the football, especially on offense.
Yeah, that's a big question out there right now. How much control does Hugh Freeze want over the offense? My guess is in your first year, a lot of control. So that means that you're probably looking at an OC coming in that's more of the face of that position, more so in the actual the implementation of being an OC. We saw a little bit of this with Gus and Rhett Lashley, where Rhett was cutting his teeth and was slowly given more and more of the reins before he went on to take different offensive coordinator positions and eventually move on to be a head coach. It would not shock me in the least to see that happen here as well. And in fact, I think that's probably what you should count on, is to see a guy who's ready to cut his teeth at OC, but maybe not ready to actually be the full-fledged OC. Is that Cadillac Williams? I don't know. My emotional Auburn heart wants him to have that. I think he's earned whatever Auburn can offer him at this point after, in some ways, salvaging a very dismal season. When you can get everybody to sell out for a 3-6 team in your stadium, that says something about how important he is to the culture and to the program. So I won't advocate for him as OC, but it wouldn't shock me in the least, because as you already addressed, this guy is probably going to want full control, if not the majority of the control of the offense in his first year. Let Cadillac maybe cut his teeth and see what happens. I don't really have any other names out there to look at, but this is the silly season, or the coaching carousel season, as you talk about it, like that. There's going to be a lot of things floating out there right now.
One final thing, Kyle, would be concerning the program and the perception of the program and the perception of the job. It's a great program. It's a great job. I don't think there's any question that it's a top 15 level job and program in the country, but it's the wares of the SEC, and particularly facing one Nick Saban in the same state. And even if Nick Saban's not there at some point in the future, it's Alabama and their great tradition and history. So when you put it all together, it's been phrased as the toughest job in America. Mm-hmm. And I get that point. I could certainly make it. What's great about Auburn, but what are the obvious or maybe not so obvious challenges for Hugh Freeze or anyone that's the head football coach at Auburn?
The biggest challenge for Hugh Freeze right now is something I've already touched on, is just the perception, the mistrust from some camps at Auburn, and some degree rightfully so. As I've said, I have cautious optimism about those things. I think that is his biggest challenge right now, is uniting this fan base around him. And that's going to be done by having success on the field, but having success off the field, especially for you personally. That's going to be challenge number one for him. What he's not going to have a challenge with is the arsenal that Auburn has given him, a $92 million brand new football only facility that I have personally walked through myself, parts that the public's not even be able to walk through. Absolutely incredible. And when you couple that with an NIL program that was already growing under Harsin, exploded when he left, and it's probably only going to get better while he's here, he's got tools, and any coach who would step into the position that are just, which should make them salivate, frankly. So there's going to be a lot of things that are going to work in Hugh's favor very quickly. I don't think that's to say that you should expect Auburn to be running for an SEC title next year, but expect them with a powerful offensive, history with Hugh Freeze and some offensive weapons that are still there, even though some will probably leave. you're going to have some opportunities for there to be some goodwill, those early challenges that I just talked about of camps of Auburn that are not so fond of this hire to be brought on board. You know, they say winning cures everything. It's a fun little saying, and to some degree it's true, but there are some things that do need to be discussed and taken seriously. When you look at outside of Auburn, though, you talked about Alabama, but you got to also look across the state to Georgia. That's the hardest part about the Auburn job is, yes, you're dealing with Alabama in your own state, but you're surrounded by your second rival in the exact state where you get a lot of your recruits from in Georgia, who's having the best time of their lives, frankly, in the last 40 years. So that is really the challenge of Auburn, not just Alabama, not just Georgia, the recruiting battles that go within that, the competition on the field, but getting the Auburn family holistically. You're never going to be able to get everybody, but as a collective behind you going forward.
Hugh Freeze is back in the SEC. He's with the Auburn Tigers, announced today. We got Kyle Loomis here, E2C Network. Kyle, thanks so much for stopping by. I appreciate it because you got so much going on and want to, of course, gather all this information yourself and chase things down yourself. But we want to encourage everyone to head on over to E2C Network right here on YouTube and get immersed in the Auburn community and the Auburn family with everything that is Auburn. Kyle, we appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by, sir.
Thank you, Mark. War Eagle.
All right. Kyle Loomis helping us out on the Hugh Freeze front. Georgia Reload, appreciate the Super Chat contribution. Purdue is going to upset. That would be Michigan. All right. They're a 16.5-point dog. The one thing I will say about the Boilers, and then we'll take the call from Will and get cranked up on the calls here, is that this is the one wild card out of the Western Division. Everybody else pretty much plays the same brand of football. If you look at the top teams in the West, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, of course, and now Illinois with Brett Bielema, run the football strong at the point of attack, play good defense, or in Iowa's case, great take the ball away defense. So it's all ground game, and it's all about the defense as well. Trying to figure out who's calling me, but it's about defense and ground game. Purdue's the wild card. Purdue plays the other game. They've got Aiden O'Connell. He can sling it. He can carve up a defense if he's given time. Charlie Jones at wideout and the rest of those receivers there with Wilt Wright and so forth. Payne Durham, one of the best tight ends in college football. Devin Mockabee, nobody's going to run harder than that guy. If you ever watch Devin Mockabee carry the ball, where many of you will see him for the first time on Saturday night, if he's got any kind of crease, any kind of room, maybe Purdue can do a little damage. But Purdue, it's strange because when Iowa, Minnesota, and Illinois and Wisconsin show up, I know what they're going to bring, even these watered-down versions of their best this season. When Purdue shows up, I don't know, complete wild card. They've been pretty damn good on certain occasions this season, and other times they've been pretty awful. They are the least consistent team in that division out of those five. But they got to play Saturday night, and we'll see what they got. Another super chat coming in. We appreciate that coming in here from, Uncle Lou stopping by here. Cyber Monday sale, buy one, Hugh Freeze, get a lifetime of NCAA investigations for free. That's the deal you get with Hugh Freeze. Thank you, Uncle Lou. Appreciate you stopping by, man. Now, we got our guy, Will.
Mark, I love this. I love the fun, the chaos of Hugh Freeze back in the Power 5. Who knows what's going to happen? They could go 10-2. They could win a national championship, or it could go all wrong. It could just not work. And also the investigations could get Ole Miss. So who knows? I mean, not Auburn now. Who knows what's going to happen with Hugh Freeze and Auburn? It's fascinating.
Some people like myself may actually point out if things go terribly wrong that, you hired Brian Harsin. Now, he didn't do anything wrong, but there was controversy around him. But as it vetted itself out and there were investigations and committees, he apparently didn't do anything wrong. But there was tons of controversy and there's a bad situation. So you went from that to hiring somebody that was suspect. So if it all goes wrong, you're only going to have yourself to blame. You're only going to have yourself to blame. Shame on me, shame on you that first or second time, one of those deals. So
yeah, I don't know. I just like this just screams Bobby Petrino. Like, I don't know what's going to happen for Auburn. Like, I think it's fun when all the teams are doing well in college football, the big names, but I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen with Auburn? It'll be very interesting.
Yeah, see, what I don't understand about the fascination with Hugh Freeze is that this isn't, okay, I'll throw out Urban Meyer. We know what he's accomplished. We know how much he's accomplished, and we know the transgressions that you may want to stay away from. So we understand that. But if you hire him, you know what you're getting. Hugh Freeze, his winning was directly tied to cheating. So I'm not understanding the sales pitch there on Hugh Freeze. Okay, he won at Ole Miss, but he brought in these crazy recruiting classes because he was cheating.
Yeah.
I don't understand why he's in the running for all these jobs, and I don't quite get it. Maybe I will in 3 years when Auburn's 10-2.
Yeah. I'm fascinated also with Matt Rule at Nebraska. I feel like this could go really well, but it might take more time than Husker fans want. But I think it's actually a really smart hire by the Nebraska AD. Do you think they can finally get it back and running, like back to at least 9-3 seasons?
Well, I think that the Big Ten Western Division now has an entire division of capable coaches. Like, if you look over the last 15 to 20 years and look at programs like Illinois and Minnesota, they've had guys that were just nondescript. Who are these guys? What have they ever done kind of coaches? But all of these coaches in the entire division now are quality coaches. But somebody's got to lose the games. They're going to play each other, and somebody's got to lose the game. So somebody's not going to be successful. So it's not going to be automatic for Nebraska. I will say that they've got the most dedicated fan base in the division and probably all of college football, actually. Mm-hmm. And they are building new facilities out, which Illinois and Northwestern have both done recently as well, but theirs are supposed to be just grandiose. And I think they've got more resources and are willing to, at least in the recent past, roll out the resources more so than the other programs in that division. Although if Wisconsin's going to give Luke Fickell $9 million a year, they're obviously serious as well. So maybe the Big Ten West, maybe there's some hope for the Big Ten West getting serious.
Mm-hmm. Well, Frank thinks the Big Ten used to get really serious and that Ryan Day should be gone already.
Yeah, 44-5 doesn't cut it.
I feel like Luke Fickell will definitely have success faster than Matt Rule, just because Wisconsin's been more stable of a program. Yeah. And I think they'll at least get back to the prime, maybe not the prime Brett Bielema years, but at least get back into having more success. Although Braylon Allen's wants to transfer, so that's his first big job for Luke Fickell, to get him to stay in Madison.
So we know that about Braylon Allen, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, do you think Willie Fritz and Georgia Tech will go better than the guy they fired, Jeff Collins? Do you think
that? Well, it can't go much worse.
Yeah, that's true. Do you think they can at least get 6-6 in the next 3 years?
Yes, they better be able to do that. Almost anyone can do that. Georgia Tech, you can win at Georgia Tech. Can you win big? No, that hasn't been proven really in forever. But you can win. Paul Johnson, I don't consider him to be a great coach, and he was going to ACC championship games.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like Paul Johnson kind of set up what Ken Niumatalolo did at Navy. So, I mean, I'll give him credit for that, but he didn't win.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Kenny Dillingham's also interesting. I don't know. I think it might be a little early for him. I mean, he did do a good job with Oregon, but he hasn't really been a top coordinator for that long. And I wasn't really impressed with what he did at Florida State.
Yeah, so he's a young guy at 32.
Yeah.
And no, they didn't do anything. They've got their best offense right now under Mike Norvell than they had under Kenny Dillingham. He worked with Bo Nix at Auburn. So at least he's been around 3 major programs. So if any of that is rubbed off on him, he's got a pretty good idea of how he wants to run a big time program. So sometimes that's an issue. Somebody is in over their head at that age that's never been a head coach before, but he's been around 3 different programs. And if he's a smart guy, then you take from those experiences.
Yeah. Another thing that not many people are talking about that I'm interested in is Daryl Dickey, of course, got the axe from Texas A&M. Now, will Billy Liucci, or however, I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, can he actually do what he wants on offense? Or is it just going to be a typical Jimbo Fisher, boring offense that's not going to score many points?
Well, it wasn't a boring offense on Saturday night.
That's true. Well, consistently.
Sure, I know what you're talking about. Obviously, you're right. I'm just throwing that out there that they did finish with a flurry. I've said this about Jimbo Fisher before, that I don't understand somebody in his position who can't look themselves in the mirror and understand, hey, I'm the head coach at Texas A&M. This could go so right for me. I've got everything I could ever want in terms of my paycheck and how much money I get to pay coaches, facilities, all of it, recruiting. I got everything I need. I got an NIL. I got everything. And all I need to do is relinquish a little bit of power and not think I'm the smartest guy in the world and bring in an offensive coordinator who knows what they're doing. And actually, I would welcome that. I would welcome, like, I got enough to do. I got to run a whole football program with 105 players and probably 15 to 20 support staff along with coaches. Get somebody else to run the offense. And you know what? When we win an SEC championship, everybody's going to be still patting me on the back. They're not going to say, well, you didn't have anything to do with it. You weren't running the offense or calling the plays. No, I'm still the head coach. So he must truly believe that he is the most qualified, the best guy to be calling plays in the year 2022. And it's not the case.
All right, Mark. Well, I don't want to hold up the call-in line too much. I am also sad for David Shaw, but we'll get to that maybe at a different call. But I love the coaching carousel is up and running, and I'm here for it. So, and I'll be here, the voice of college football. So, thanks Mark.
Will. Appreciate you being here. Catch Will and the rest of the boys on the Young Guns show. Phenomenal.
All right. See you, Mark.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate it. All right, let's keep it rolling tonight. We got Rob on the line. Welcome in, Rob. Good to see you.
Hey, Mark. Good to be back. So I had a question for you. I was watching your show the other day where you were talking about the Ohio State game with what's his name? Well, either way, it was a Michigan guy, and you had a question about you said you wanted to talk about, or you wanted to hear from Ryan Day what his logic was when he punted on that 4th down. I was curious if you saw the post on Reddit or if you heard what Jim Harbaugh had said about how they got lucky on one of those plays. I was wondering if you'd seen that or not.
I had somebody comment back to me about them running a fake punt, and then the punter, there was an issue with the snap, and it was supposed to go to one of the upbacks, and it went to the punter, and therefore he just went ahead and punted.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I was wondering if you'd heard about that, but it seems you have. So,
it's just that in the last hour.
Oh, okay. It's a curious thing, right? It's like it makes you wonder what would have happened, because Ryan Day didn't talk about that in his post game press conference, as far as I know, and he was taking a lot of heat for that. And you would think that he might have addressed that, to get some of the heat off him, but maybe he just felt like taking the heat for the team or something. I don't know. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, I heard him asked that. I didn't make it through the entire post game, but he was asked about it, and he just said something like, we just felt as though that was our best option at the time.
Yeah,
and he gave a very generic answer.
Yeah, I think fan bases are so fickle. Like, I know you were giving Michigan fans a bit of grief the other day for they're calling in after against with the Illinois game, and how they're not going to watch the game because Blake Corum was going out, And now you got Ohio State fans calling for Ryan Day's firing after he's, 45-5 or something like that?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. Like, where are we at in college football when a head coach is like winning that much and being that dominant, with the exception of obviously the last 2 Michigan games? But I would kill for Ryan Day, at Notre Dame. I mean, I'm pretty happy with Marcus Freeman. I think he's got a bright future. But I mean, what I'm saying is, like, that's the kind of coach you're not just gonna, like, luck into. He's a good coach and it's ridiculous that so many people are calling for him to be fired, I think.
Yeah, so I made this statement last week, and I told both Ohio State and Michigan fans that they wouldn't necessarily like this. And I said, this isn't necessarily true, but understand that it could be true, that we're going to have 2 excellent football teams playing on Saturday, and one of them has to lose the game. Therefore, failure. That's basically what it is, because both, certainly I can speak from the Ohio State standpoint for sure, Michigan fans going into the season seem to be more kind of like, well, we would be happy to win at Ohio State, but we don't expect to. And we really love that we won the Big Ten championship, and hopefully we can do something close to that. And I hear from enough Michigan fans that I think I had a pretty good feel for the pulse of the fan base, that they were just kind of like, we think we're good again, but where Ohio State fans were more like entitled, like, of course, we win every game. We're going to win every game. Nothing else is acceptable. So there was still this difference in expectation, a pretty decided difference. But I made the statement last week. It is possible, not that excellent organizations shouldn't be constantly reviewing things, making sure things are right, but somebody has to lose this game. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there is a lot broken.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think Joe Klatt said it. Ohio State doesn't have a program problem. They have a Michigan problem right now. They just need to figure out how to get back to winning against Michigan, because they're obviously destroying almost everyone else they play. So it's not like the program is in some kind, like shambles. They're not like, it's not Notre Dame during the Bob Davie days, it's or the Ty Willingham days. This program is still a top flight, absolute, elite program in college football. So you got to be careful what you wish for, Ohio State fans. You call for Ryan Day to be fired. Next thing you know, you got a lame duck head coach, and you're going, you're losing 6 games, and it can happen in the blink of an eye. And I think that's unfortunate. An unfortunate side effect of when you win so much, like Ohio State is just so used to winning everything that they don't remember what it's like to lose. And I think that's what they're experiencing right now, is like these losses to Michigan is kind of giving them a feeling they're not used to.
Yeah, I put up a graphic last night. I was jumping in the chat from the Pac-12 guys were doing their show, College Football After Dark, and I jumped in because they were talking Ohio State and what's wrong and so forth. And I said, and a number of them, including Tim, was in there saying, Ohio State fans are just spoiled. They don't really realize. And I did the quick math in my head, 128 and 14 the last 10 years. That's a record, 128 and 14. And I said, let that
That's insane.
The last time Ohio State was any worse, this is Ohio State's worst record since 2004 in the Big Ten. You know what it is?
What's that?
7-1. That's the worst record.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that's insane to me. So like, yeah, I mean, you really got to be careful what you wish for, Ohio State fans, because yeah, like I said, it can happen in the blink of an eye, where you go from the top and you tumble.
Yeah, you can be USC and USC hasn't been horrible, but they've not been USC for over 10 years now. You could be Texas. These schools have all sorts of resources and have hired to try to win. It's not like they're not trying, and they've got every luxury in the world to go out there and get the job done, but it's not that easy. It's unlike other professions where not everyone can succeed. Somebody's got to lose. So I also made the point that, I've been an Ohio State fan for a long, long time. And between 1980 and 93, Ohio State was in the race for Big Ten championship like almost every one of those years and lost 3 games at least all of those years.
Right.
So it can go back to 8-4, 9-3.
Yeah, it's pretty special what Ohio State has done. Very few programs can boast anything close to that over the last several decades. So but anyways, what's your opinion now? Let's say Ohio State next year, right, are in a similar situation. They win 10 or 11 games. They go to face Michigan at the Big House, and they lose that game, whether it's close or not. What do you think then? Now, I still would say that you keep Ryan Day personally, but what do you think? Do you think there's a legit hot seat argument at that point for Ryan Day?
So there are supposed to be really smart people that make these decisions to evaluate programs, to evaluate people, because the evidence is, okay, we can't beat Michigan. Suddenly it's gone from Ohio State can't lose to Michigan to 2 years later, they can't beat Michigan. What do we do about this? And is this the right guy? And do we get rid of him? Versus how much do you, in the face of all that evidence, do you believe in this guy? And now I believe that Michigan was faced with that here in the last year and a half, and they went to Jim Harbaugh and they actually showed their faith and trust in him, and he delivered. So that's up to people that work with Ryan Day on a daily basis to be able to sit down with him and review his work and review how he conducts himself and how he's running the program and say, is he getting the job done to our expectations? Yeah, if this is a complete aberration, what you're saying for that,
right,
to continue to go 11-1, always lose to Michigan. But at some point, yeah, you would fire the coach regardless of how successful he was overall, because you have to beat Michigan and you have to win Big Ten championships at Ohio State.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking you is less of an objective take on it and more of a fan, like your own fan take. Like, what are your feelings personally on that? Like, after 3 seasons, again, this is a what if. There's no saying that Michigan's going to beat Ohio State next year, but.
Oh, my take as a fan, yeah, as a 25-year-old fan would have been much different. I probably would be ready to fire Ryan Day right now.
Yeah. Right.
25 years later, I'm a more objective than more calm and cool about it. I take the Michigan game as seriously as, well, I won't say that. I'll say at one point in my life, I took it as seriously as anybody. I'm sure I don't now, but I still take it seriously. I stand in front of within 3 feet of the TV for 3.5 hours. I don't sit down. I don't move a muscle. I locked in on that game. Yeah. So as a fan, yeah, that game just means everything. For better or for worse, and it's been for better for the last close to 20 years. When everything rides on that and you win it, well, you can pat Jim Tressel on the back or whomever it is, even if they lose a couple other games, and say, mission accomplished, he beat Michigan. But when it goes the other way, 11-1 looks horrible because you expect to win that game and you put everything into that game, and that's what makes college football special, is that the rivalry or the bragging rights, if you so choose to put that much of an investment in it, is worth that much, and it's worth more than the other 11. I saw somebody post maybe to my channel today that 1-11 beating Michigan, with the greater than sign, is better than 11-1 and losing to Michigan.
Yeah. I get that feeling. I mean, I'm not a fan of either team, but I do understand rivalries and how that works. Speaking of Michigan, Cade McNamara just said he's going to go into the transfer portal for good reason. He's kind of lost his job. Who do you think is the best fit, or what team do you think really should pursue, Cade McNamara there, or could really use him? I see, some people saying Wisconsin, Notre Dame, What's your thought on that?
Wisconsin, yes. Notre Dame, I wouldn't know why Notre Dame would go after him necessarily. Not that he's not a good player, but I would think that their standards would be higher than Cade McNamara. Iowa needs a quarterback.
Yes.
Spencer Petras is not a good quarterback, and he's gone anyway. And his backup, Alex Padilla, is not a good quarterback. I'm just being very, very plain and simple with my analysis there. I don't need to dive into details.
Yeah.
They recruited a pretty good quarterback, a 4-star, but obviously you need multiple quarterbacks. I think that if I'm Iowa, I'm going after Cade McNamara. He can manage a game, and he's a winner, and he's proven to play well in big games. And I think he would be a great fit for Iowa. He's a veteran. He's been around the game, so you're not having to train and develop. And he can be just a plug-and-play guy that can win the Western Division.
Yeah, and then Iowa should go after an offensive coordinator as well.
Absolutely.
Well, anyways, Mark, I know you got a lot of callers probably on the line, so had a good conversation. Thanks for having me on again.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. It's our guy, Rob, breaking down Ohio State, Michigan. I think we're going to do a little bit more of that, I'm guessing, with Mike on the line.
Yes, you will.
Or maybe we want to talk Purdue. I don't know.
No. If Hogg wants to come on here for that, he can go ahead and talk it. But like I said, this they would have to pull the upset of all upsets to beat us. I mean, I'll respect to Aiden O'Connell, but that's not happening.
There have been bigger upsets and will be bigger upsets.
There have been bigger upsets, but this is not going to be in West Lafayette. It's going to be in Indianapolis. Oh, that's it.
Well, I'm saying there have been bigger upsets even this college football season. Many.
Well, yeah, but
not with these kind of stakes on the game.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
No, I don't either.
And I guess for the rankings that make sense, I said it last week, but I got to go back.
Oh boy.
Still got Carolina in there, huh?
North Carolina. Yeah. They're still in there. They're 9-3.
Yeah, and I give you a little bit of pass because they only had 2 losses, but man, they are not a top 25 team. Their defense is pathetic. They just lost at home to a junk NC State team. How are they still top 25?
Junk NC State team. Well,
yes.
I've got NC State ranked too because they beat North Carolina.
So I guess you were just having a lot more love for the ACC than 95% of football fans, right?
Not necessarily. It's extremely close. Have you sat down and tried to rank all the teams?
No, but I can imagine that Carolina's not in there.
There's an enormous log jam that you got to work through. I think I counted 13 8-4 teams and 12 9-3 teams. That's 27 teams right there that have some argument to be ranked, and that doesn't even include all the teams above them. So you only have room for about not even half of those teams.
And I guess I'm just now starting to. At one point in time, I thought the Big 12 was the worst, followed by the ACC being second worst. But after what South Carolina did to Clemson on their own turf, and South Carolina is a mid-level SEC team.
Yep.
So for them to go into Clemson and win like that, that's just another vicious black eye for the ACC. And I think that trickles down too.
Sure, it is. You're right.
Okay. And having said that, I guess I'll go back to the Michigan-Ohio State thing. I think the problem with this is that Ohio State fans were sold a bill of goods on Jim Knowles. I think that Coombs was so bad that they were just begging for anybody to come in there and be their savior. So they put all their cash, they put all the chips in the middle on a Big 12 defensive coordinator in a conference where they play no defense, trying to game plan around a Michigan team that runs the ball to death, and he plays the nickel. I mean, do they realize that that's just lunacy on its surface?
Well, let's review a few things here. First of all, you're talking about the Big 12 circa like 2015.
Do you think that they're a defensive conference now?
I don't think they're a defensive conference, but I guarantee you, if I listed out the scores from every conference in America, that you wouldn't be able to tell which is which. They don't score any more points. It's gone are the days of like 52, 48 games all over the place in the Big 12 every week.
Yeah, I'd say the Pac probably took that over, but there's still not a lot of defense played in the Big 12. I mean, you got to figure whenever probably a top 3 defensive team is the one with the worst record in Iowa State. Because, I mean, can you name 3 teams in the Big 12 that have a better defense than Iowa State?
I can name 3 teams that I would take their defense with a capable defensive coordinator over Iowa State.
Texas being the obvious one, but who else would you take?
I would definitely take Texas. Coming into this season, I don't know what's gone wrong with them, but I'd take Oklahoma State, and I'd take maybe what's wrong with them is Jim Knowles left. And then the other one would be Kansas State.
Yeah, I had a hunch you'd say Kansas State. Well, I think Oklahoma State, I mean, the very first game of the year, they let Central Michigan score 44 on them.
Yes.
That's no. Yeah,
and Derek Mason is the coordinator. Okay, just to get back, I'm not touting the Big 12 as some super conference by any stretch. It's a marginal conference with a lot of Marylands in it, a lot of Marylands and
Illinois and
Illinois. Yeah, about that level. I was trying to find somebody under Illinois, but I didn't want to go to Northwestern and Nebraska. But anyway, a lot of just they're okay. They're not an embarrassment. A lot of, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State teams. There's really no balance of power, even though they've got an undefeated team. If you watch them play against anybody except for this last weekend against Iowa State, they don't dominate anyone. They beat everyone by 1 score. Yeah. So it's a very balanced league, which is nice that there are no Virginia Techs and Rutgers and Colorado's in the conference, but there are also no Michigans or Georgias in the conference. And there's not even really Penn States in the conference.
No.
Or anybody like that. It's a league of a bunch, and it's going to get worse or better depending on your perspective when they add these 4 from the American Conference.
I will push back. I think there is one Penn State caliber team in the Big 12.
Sure, it's TCU.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the best they've got.
Yeah. So back to your original point. So I just wanted to point out that it's not the offensive-driven league that it used to be.
Yeah, it's not quite. Like I said, I think that title has kind of moved over the Pac.
And then the other point I would make is that I cautioned Ohio State fans. I wasn't saying I was going to be right or wrong about this. I wasn't trying to make a point as to this is my prediction. I was just saying, look at Jim Knowles' work at Oklahoma State. So he took over, and actually the first 2 seasons he was there, they got worse. Their defensive rankings got worse his first 2 years. Then they got better. And then he capped out. He just shot up the last year. That was he had a top 5 defense in the country. And were they the 5th best defense in the country? No, they weren't the 5th best defense. But statistically, they were the 5th best defense. They were maybe the 20th best defense. But before that, it wasn't like he had a string of top 5 defenses at Oklahoma State. He had one.
He had one, yeah.
Before that, 67, 48, whatever they were something like that. So I cautioned Ohio State fans to say, number one, this guy regressed when he first got there. Now, maybe he needed to figure things out, and who knows what the circumstances were, but I'm just saying they regressed. He didn't come in, snap his fingers, and correct the problems. And number 2, you're not talking about Jim Leonard at Wisconsin that just every year, top 10 defense. One season.
Yeah. And I guess was the reason to bring in Knowles to compete with the SEC teams in the playoffs, or was it to compete against us? Because like I said, if you bring in a guy that touts the nickel against Michigan, you look foolish doing that. especially because your secondary is not good. And like I said, I've said this from the get. And if you have a weak defensive backs in the nickel, you're in for a long day.
Yes. I don't know how to answer that question because the season before, of course, they went to the national championship game undefeated and got torched by Alabama. Now, that Alabama team was pretty pass happy, and that's how they killed Ohio State. But Ohio State, that defense, it wasn't just not that great. It also was just ravaged with COVID and injuries and couldn't play all sorts of guys the entire season, and some of them in the championship game that were really good. So I don't know if that was a fair barometer on where their defense stood. And then the next year, they have a bad defensive season, but it gets underlined by the Michigan loss in which they got whipped in a completely different way. So I don't know where they were going with Jim Knowles in terms of where their reaction was, Michigan or Alabama, but I would think it would have been more Michigan.
I mean, is it just instant overreaction to them just wanting Coombs out so bad that they just take, anybody with a pulse that had a remotely decent reputation?
Maybe if that's the best they could do. I don't know if they were thinking, okay, Coombs has to go and we got to get the best guy we can get. No, we're not doing as well as we thought. Jim Knowles. Or if they were just like, Jim Knowles, this is the guy we want. I don't know.
Like I said, I really hope that Jim Knowles wasn't what they eyed, because if they think this can be the savior for their defense, they've got some tough times up ahead, especially against us.
Mike, if we talk about things like this, I have to guarantee that a staff like Ohio State and Ryan Day are not just saying, this guy had the 5th ranked defense in the country, let's hire him. I got to think they're throwing in defensive clips and they're watching games from the previous year and going, okay, what's he running? What are they doing here? Does this make sense? Does this similar to what the kind of offenses we're facing? I would hope that they're processing all of that.
Yeah. I mean, my only thing is that I think the only way this works is they need to get some lockdown first round NFLers in that backfield. Otherwise, this experiment is going to fail.
Guys. Yeah, they don't have those guys. They used to. I don't know what happened to their recruiting for defensive backs, because from about the time, well, even before Urban Meyer up until about 2017, they always had the first rounders.
Yeah, I think they had, was it 2 or 3 years ago, they had, I think, two safeties, both their starting safeties go in the first round.
That would have been the Jeffrey Okudah to Detroit draft. He was the 3rd player selected. And then they had Jordan Fuller. He was the 20th select to the Rams.
And that was 2019, 2020?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if they had those kind of guys, I could see this working, but not with what they got now.
No.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and step aside and let somebody else get up.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
We got Jack here. We appreciate the super chat contribution. Thank you for that. As a Michigan fan, is there a chance our Cinderella season is thwarted by the spoiler makers? Well, they do have a reputation, and more so than a reputation, they actually have a history of defeating more top 5 teams than anybody as an unranked team. Purdue has more wins like that than anybody in the country. Also understand, to do that, you have to be unranked a lot. So it's not like they've had great football teams. I don't see a path. I don't see a way. If this were last year, I definitely had concerns about Michigan going from the mountaintop to having to play Iowa 6.5 days later for the Big Ten championship, and knowing that Iowa would be disciplined, focused, buttoned up, and all that. But Purdue's not disciplined and focused and buttoned up. Have you paid attention to Purdue football this year? Woo! This is Purdue. You can say all you want about how bad the Big Ten Western Division is, but Illinois, Minnesota, Iowa, they've all pretty much done the same thing every week. They're the same team every week, pretty much. Warts and all, good spots and all. Purdue's done this. I've seen them play Syracuse, and they looked crappy for a half, and then they came back, and they were throwing the ball all over the place, but then they blew it at the end, and they played really well against Penn State. Yeah, then they, for 2 consecutive weeks, 3 weeks ago, they were the last team that it should have been going to Indianapolis. Forget the score against Wisconsin. They got killed, and they got killed against Iowa 2 consecutive weeks, and here they are. And what did they do to earn this big? Well, they went on the road and beat Illinois. That was their big win. All right, let's pick this off from Matthew Miller and take our next call. Matthew Miller says, and if it's the Matthew Miller, we appreciate you being here. Matthew, of course, hosts our Texas postgame shows at the Voice of College Football. So catch Matthew and Brandon after the Texas Bowl game. We will find out who they're going to play here soon. Sunday, that'll be a big weekend. Can't wait for conference championships, playoff selections, then all the bowl selections go out on Sunday. It's just, yeah, that's phenomenal. Love it. So Matthew says, Big 12 defenses always looked worse than they were because of the great offenses. Well, that's the chicken and the egg kind of thing. Big 10 defenses always looked better because the offenses aren't great. By the way, the SEC is number 1, the Pac-12 2. The Big 12 is number 3. The Big 10 is number 4, and the ACC is number 5. Until further notice, I'm not going to argue that point. I will say that the Big 10 is more talented than the Big 12 and will be producing more NFL players than the Big 12. There's no question about that. When it comes to producing NFL players, the Big 12 has been a freaking graveyard. The Big 12 has gone 2 consecutive NFL drafts with no first-round picks. Double check me on that one. I'm almost positive. All right, Landon's here. What's going on, Landon?
Mark, thanks for having me in, buddy.
Of course.
My man. First of all, I do want to defend your take on the ACC. Not that you ever need anybody's help, but I would like to point out that Syracuse did beat Purdue, who is playing for the Big Ten championship. I would also add Pittsburgh not only beating West Virginia, played Tennessee when Tennessee was healthy, incredibly well, incredibly close. Yeah. NC State did beat Texas Tech, who is the 4th best team in the Big 12. So, whatever criticism. And I think the biggest stat, of course, is Florida State beat 2 SEC schools. So, there's not much margin in terms of which conference is the best or the worst. So, I'm an advocate of your position on that. I do think NC State is a pretty good team, especially when they had Devin Leary. There's some NFL bodies on that team, man. So, anyway, I want to drop 2 quick questions for you, buddy, before we get into championship week and implications on the playoff, if you can help me out. First quick question, and maybe you can answer it quick, is how was the Pac-12 determined in terms of why is Utah playing instead of Washington for the conference championship?
The Pac-12 did something that I thought was very bold. It shouldn't be bold, but in this day and age, and when everybody's buttoned up and it takes like 4 years to make a decision, the Pac-12 just determined like 4 weeks before the season started, no divisions. Yeah. Although if you look up the standings, you see divisions, but we are not determining our conference championship game based on divisions. It's simply going to be the best record against the second best record.
Okay. So I guess my point is both Washington and Utah are 7-2. They didn't play each other. Technically, Washington has a better overall record, and I guess that's not supposed to weigh anything. So what was the deciding factor? Why was Utah elevated over Washington is my question.
I'm about 98% sure it was common opponents.
Okay.
So whoever had the better record amongst common opponents.
Okay. So the fact that Washington probably lost to Arizona State is probably what dropped them out then.
So who did, you know what? I should have it very close because I'm doing a USC Utah breakdown of who they played. So give me 2 seconds. There it is. So they both played UCLA. Of course, Utah lost that game. Colorado are wins. Arizona are wins. Arizona State are wins. Or no, we're comparing Utah and Washington. I'm sorry. So anyway, I'd have to go through it.
That's okay, buddy. I if you don't know it off the top of your hand,
it's usually common opponents is the next one in line.
Okay, buddy. The second thing is thinking about some of Ohio State's bigger losses, the fact that offensively they crank out a massive amount of yardage, and thinking of some of the more significant losses since Ryan Day's been coach, going back to, say, the 2019 Clemson game, 4 trips to the red zone, 3 field goals, but they still outgained Clemson by 100 yards. The Oregon game last year, over 650 yards of offense, only 27 points. Saturday, 500 yards, 23 points. What's your general explanation of them being able to just crank up a truckload of yards, but somehow it not equating on the scoreboard?
Well, there's a couple things that you have to have going for you in the red zone. One would be a running game that can move. So see, their running game statistically has looked good, like especially last year, but it wasn't as good as it was statistically because they didn't move the better teams off the ball. So in the red zone, you got to run the ball, and you've got to have big targets that are guys that can catch the ball in traffic, either big bodies on the outside or a tight end. They really haven't had a receiving tight end of note. So that would be one thing that I would think would factor into that. And I think play calling is more important in the red zone. So you'd have to go through each game and watch the play calling and see what they're calling down there. But I think play calling is important more so in the red zone.
And that's what I was wondering, if you thought it was all of a sudden the play calling gets either a little bit tight or whatever the case may be, just wrong. He's able to navigate a team all the way down the field, but when that end zone shortens things up, is that some kind of I can't remember where I first heard this. I think I heard it on Chuck Oliver's show, where people say, play design is a science, play calling is an art. And I think it harkened back to when they were talking about Clemson's offensive coordinators with Elliott and Scott, like, the difference if one of those guys isn't there, that he had scripted when he wasn't on the sidelines in 2010, in 2020 against Ohio State in that playoff game. They talked about how the first series of offensive plays were scripted, and that's when Clemson was kind of marching down the field, scored a touchdown, and after that, it really stalled out, and that's what kind of brought up that whole play calling is a bit of an art. You know what I mean? That Ryan Day could be a fantastic play designer, but there could be something within that where play calling is maybe a shortcoming of his. You guys were talking about Jimbo giving up play calling duties. Does maybe he need to kind of relinquish some of that play calling stuff? When it gets, I don't know, just throwing something out there.
It's also something that I'm just conjecturing here. I don't know this for sure, but I think guys like Ryan Day, guys that are pass-oriented guys that are generally guys that are offensive-minded guys, that's kind of the shell of the 7-on-7 is where they're focused. Not necessarily they're not offensive line guys. So they want to call what they want to call, and they want the plays to work, and they're looking at what can my quarterback do, who do I want to get in space and all that. And there's also a consideration to be made about what your offensive line's capable of doing. And I thought in short yardage situations and in a lot of running situations that Ryan Day was asking an offensive line that wasn't athletic enough to do certain things to do them just because he wanted to call the play. He wanted to call.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. All right, buddy. Real quick, this week coming up, championship games. First thing is, do you think that no matter what happens to TCU, they're automatically in the playoff, or is there a limit to how bad they can lose and still make it?
Well, that's going to be a direct resume comparison to, let's say, Ohio State. Whereas if you've got a championship, then you can have that argument. How much does the championship weigh versus the resume? But they won't have a championship. They'll just have an extra data point. And you can argue what's that extra data point worth when you played Tarleton, wherever they're located, Colorado and SMU in non-conference play. So it would be a matter of lining up. For me, it would be a matter of lining up their schedule against Ohio State's to see who had the better resume, number one, and then who dominated more, so who had game control in those games.
Right. Yep.
And I could care less that they, at that point, went to the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, there is an element where TCU, I think, before they just smashed Iowa State, 6 straight games they're having to come from behind. Their defensive efficiency numbers are actually pretty bad. As far as an overall, I was just wondering what your take. You're hearing a lot that no matter what they're in, I guess, unless they just get splattered by 3 or 4 touchdowns or something, it seems like people are just automatically putting them in. I was just wondering what your thought was, if you thought, not what you want to happen, but do you think that there really is a limit that the committee will be like, man, that loss is too bad. At the end of the year on a neutral field, you beat Kansas State at home. This is a neutral field. That's just too bad of a loss. You're not one of the 4 best teams.
Yeah, so of course they got to lose this game. That's Kansas State. It's a 9-3 football team.
Yeah.
Versus
Okay.
Ohio State losing to Michigan. So I would think that TCU can't lose in the manner that Ohio State did, but if they lose by a field goal, I think a lot of this comes down to how truly exhaustive does the committee get in looking into these things. When I look at the Ohio State-Michigan game, Michigan was clearly the better team, but I look at blowouts differently. There are a lot of games that are 22-point separations at the end that were never a game. That, you know, it was 21-3 in the first quarter and the game was over and they're just trading scores the rest of the game, and the rest of it's meaningless. Versus 20-17 Ohio State at half, you know, it's still a game with 10 minutes left, and then they give up the scores that give it a blowout look.
Right.
That's a different game to me.
That's right. That's where context has a lot to do with this. I think sometimes that's overlooked, part of the nuance of things like that. That's a good point. I'll grant you that. Now, let's just say TCU handles business or loses close enough. They stay in the consideration if USC loses. So is it your conjecture that Ohio State's the automatic to go into 4? Because Colin Cowherd brought Alabama up again Friday on his podcast because their losses were both on the road and they've lost by a total of 4 points in both instances, that he seems to think Alabama will have enough to be able to slide into that 4 spot. What would be your take if USC loses? Who gets that 4 spot?
Well, for as much as I like listening to Colin Cowherd, I haven't in a long time, but I love listening to the guy. He's great. He's not going to take any kind of deep dive on this. He's looking at he's comparing those 2 Alabama losses.
Yeah.
Lost on the last play of the game versus Ohio State getting their butt kicked. To a certain extent against Michigan, but it's still 1 loss versus 2. And I do think that Alabama has a tougher schedule, top to bottom, playing in the SEC, but they don't have wins against Penn State and Notre Dame.
Yeah.
They've got Ole Miss and Mississippi State. At
Texas, whatever value that is.
Yeah, those are their 3 8-4 teams.
Yeah.
So I think Ohio State's wins at the top have been better, and Ohio State didn't walk a tightrope like Alabama did against Texas, against Ole Miss, against Texas A&M.
Yeah.
Against Arkansas to a certain extent, which ironically is the same score as the Ohio State-Michigan game, but that was a 5-point game midway through the 4th quarter.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping the committee is doing its job.
Well, okay. Now let me ask you this, and I know it's going to be hard to take your your fan glasses off for just a second, but based on what you saw out of Ohio State, again, that's at home, and at home loss to that magnitude is a little bit different than on the road. It's really hard to win on the, you're going to get ready to do Utah. All their losses are on the road. You look at Penn State. Penn State has a horrible time on the road, especially against ranked opponents, but at home, they tend to do a little bit better. Do you genuinely think Ohio State's in a mental and physical place to walk into the playoff and do some damage as opposed to where Alabama is right now? Like if you was to look at both teams, who's trending in the right direction right now?
Oh, well, the most recent data point is obviously in Alabama's favor. by far. They haven't lost for a while. Yeah, so if you're a believer and we want to select the best teams right now, that's definitely in Alabama's favor.
I'm not saying that that's a definitive end-all be-all data point, but just adding to the conversation, adding to as another consideration. As a fan, are you comfortable wanting Ohio State in that playoff playing Georgia in the first round? How comfortable are you with that?
Well, if Ohio State was 7-5 and somebody said you can play in the playoff, I'd say let's play.
I got you. Okay.
I'm always in that.
I got you.
You can't win a championship without playing. And if they walk off the field and they lost 52-3, so be it.
I got you. Okay. All right, buddy. Hey, man. Appreciate it. Good talk.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, man.
Or Landon, I'm sorry. Thanks.
That's okay. It's okay,
Appreciate
buddy.
it, man.
Yeah, man.
All right. Next up, we got Michael. Michael's headed to the Big Ten championship game as Boilers. Made it.
Hey, Mark. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing well.
Anyway, I got a couple questions. Yeah, I know that I mean, IU rating for 166 yards in the first half, stuff like that. It did. Ron English slammed the door on it in the second half. But in my opinion, and a lot of people think I might be crazy for this, but if I'm Ron English, I'd do the same thing again, make J.J. McCarthy beat you with his arm, because I don't think he can do it 2 games in a row, especially with the injuries they have to Corman and Edwards. Is that what you would do?
Well, yeah, I understand your take. And just because you may or may not think that J.J. McCarthy's capable of doing that, I think that's still the way you got to play it, because you got to go with what's tougher to do. What's tougher to do is to throw the ball downfield. Even in a closed environment with perfect conditions, it's still tougher to make connections downfield than it is to turn around and hand the ball to somebody. And so, yeah, I think you got to put it in JJ's hands, at least to start.
Mm-hmm. And I got to ask you this, so who do you think the and this has been a rough week for Aiden O'Connell, too, because his brother passed away before the games late last week and stuff. But who do you think will be the X factor for Purdue? Do you think it can be Mockabee, and can he get over 100 yards against Michigan?
Did you say Aiden O'Connell's brother passed away?
Yeah. I don't know if you seen the end of the game Saturday, but when he was crying, that's the reason why.
Oh, wow. That's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Devin Mockabee gains 100 yards against Michigan. Wow. Unless he rips off an 80-yarder, which I don't see happening because the Michigan defense would flag him down, I would think. Wow. If he gets 100 yards, that is a great sign for Purdue. I don't see him coming anywhere close to 100 yards rushing.
So you think they'll just make him maybe put on O'Connell to beat Michigan?
Well, they need to try to run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
They need to try to be balanced to a certain extent. But, if Purdue pulls off an upset, I'm going to think that Devin Mockabee ran for, 78 yards on 16 or 17 carries, and Aiden O'Connell threw for 340 or 350.
Mm-hmm. And stuff like that. No, I was just wondering. I would like with you the same way like that. I got a feeling that Mockabee's gonna have a couple decent runs and stuff like that, because the way he's just like improving back, kind of like Corum, even though Corum's a little bit is better than Devin is. But I got a feeling he's gonna, when it's all said and done, Mockabee's gonna be a decent running back at Purdue.
Oh, he already is a decent one. He's not Blake Corum though, but no. Blake Corum is hobbling.
Mm-hmm. And so is Edwards and stuff like that. But the thing is, I didn't catch who the other running back was for Michigan.
Well, they got C.J. Stokes would be the number 3 guy. He's a freshman.
Mm-hmm. This is one of stuff like that, because like I said, I don't know, and stuff like that. That's just my take about it like that too. So, all right, I'm going to let you go because you got other callers and stuff like that. Thanks, sir. Oh, what I say before I ask you, how is it North Carolina still ranked when they're 2-2 in their last 4 games? Is it because they're 9-3 on the season?
Yeah, it's a season ranking. It's not a last 4 games ranking.
Mm-hmm. No, I know that and stuff like that. I was just wondering, because a lot of people were scratching their heads. How is North Carolina still ranked as bad as they've been playing the last quarter of the season? Just me, though. All right, sir.
It's a complete ranking on the entire season.
All right, sir. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. All right. Joey says they don't need, meaning Ohio State, to they don't need lockdown corners. They need to be able to stop the run without sending the entire country of Uruguay. Stop looking at symptoms. Look at the roots. The lockdown corners wouldn't hurt. Having better players in the secondary than they have had over the last really 3 seasons, 20, 21, and 22. Cadillac, how you doing?
What's going on, bud?
What is going on?
Listen, I had to call in because that the caller before that last caller hit it on the nail about Alabama. You know how I am about Alabama. All right, let me just explain it. If they do get to 5, which I don't know if they will or not, there's a good shot. And none of those guys up above them want Alabama in the playoffs. I'm just telling you, they don't. It's not, you got Nick Saban, a month to prepare. It's a different monster. With that being said, y'all were discussing how y'all were comparing Ohio State's 1 loss to Alabama's 2.
Yeah.
The only thing I could say about that, Michigan didn't even have that running back going.
Sure.
And they went to Ohio State's house and stomped them.
Yeah.
I know, late in the game, but come on, bottom line. I mean, it was.
Well, no, it's not bottom line. It's there is differences in how you can lose by 22 points. There are a lot of different ways that you can lose by 22 points.
Well, okay, all right. I'm listening. Go
You
ahead.
don't think so?
No.
You've never watched a football game where there's been a 21-point difference and thought one way about that game, and then seen another game where there was a 21-point difference at the end of the game and knew that.
Yeah, I mean, there are situations.
It's completely
of
different.
Course, yeah, where it seems like it just tumbles once the opposing team gets a little leverage, and everything falls their way. But
how many times has Alabama? And I can think of a lot of Tennessee games in the last 10 years against Alabama, where Alabama put up 3 or 4 touchdowns in the first quarter, was up 21 or 28 zip. And then it didn't really matter what the score was the rest of the game. They just kind of traded touchdowns, and Alabama beat them, 45-21. But it was over after 5 or 6 minutes.
That was that kill factor. Alabama had a tendency back in the day to have, they demoralized. And a lot of that's defensive play. I mean, a lot of it was stopping the run, which we got to get back to doing that. But that's for another day. But
and one thing about Blake Corum's a great player, and he didn't play in this game after 2 carries, so he was completely a non-factor in this game, and that's totally get that.
Think the committee. I believe the committee will look at that very closely because it's like taking Bryce Young out of the game. I mean, it's how do I explain it? It would be like Alabama went to Ohio State and Bryce Young took a severe injury. He's gone. Their premier player.
Yeah, I'm not.
And then Alabama still somehow.
Bryce Young's the quarterback. He's got much more control over the game than a running back.
Right. You think? I mean, but that wasn't kind of like that was their sugar and spice though to their offense. I mean, they start with the run. I mean, that's how they operate. I mean, without
the running back that took over for Blake Corum, even though he's not as productive, if you follow recruiting and you watched him play last year, you know that he's maybe more talented. I'm not saying he's a better player at this stage of his career,
right.
But that they were able to turn to another running back who's played extremely well in the past. The second point I was going to make is that. Do you realize that the top rusher for Ohio State was their 4th string running back, and he was a linebacker a month ago? So
that's
Ohio
crazy.
State had injuries too. They had a 1,400-yard rusher who scored 19 touchdowns last year who didn't play.
That's unbelievable. That's cool.
Williams.
Well, look, Ohio State's a very gifted, talented football team. Mark. I mean, they are. But I don't understand the only thing about Ohio State is they, other than the 1 year in 2014 where they beat up on Alabama.
Yeah.
I haven't known them to be a dominant presence in the playoff era. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the first year, yeah, they did the thing. They were good. Ezekiel Knight and crew, and they were just a stout football team that year. And I haven't seen that from them. I mean, I've seen some good Urban Meyer teams. I've seen, where they have a really good offense, but it just seems like, when the going gets tough, they kind of like, I don't know, I don't know if they get nervous or if they.
How many teams have won more playoff games than Ohio State?
Oh God, more playoff like since 14, right?
Yeah.
Well, they obviously swept that. That was 2. I think they won a couple of. Well, they won 1 to get to Bama in the finals in 20. I'm trying to think of all the.
Well, the answer is Alabama and Clemson. So there's only 2 teams that have won more playoff games. And really that 2019 Clemson game, if anybody wants to go back and watch that one, that's anyway. I get your point, but if you look over history, they won a national championship. They beat the top 2 teams in the country in 2014.
Oh, they were good. Yeah.
2015, they had a great team. They didn't make the playoff. They were 11-1. They had the same record as Alabama and a lot of other teams, but they didn't make the playoff. It was their fault. They lost the wrong game.
Yeah, exactly.
They lost the wrong game. 2016, they got blown out by Clemson. And they had a lot better team in 2015 than they did in 2016, but they got selected in 2016. They got blown out by Clemson. 17 and 18, they finished number 5. They just barely missed. So they didn't make
right on the edge. Yeah. Alabama stuck in there because of situations. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were the Big Ten champ both of those years. And then in 2019 was the year they were undefeated, and they lost to Clemson in a classic game with a lot of questionable calls.
Yeah, well, I remember a little bit about that one. That was a strange, weird game. And then 2020,
where they blasted
Clemson.
They
just didn't have the game experience. They didn't play nearly the games Alabama did. Other than, and I thought that was just a little bit crazy anyway. You had, what did Ohio State have? 7 games under their belt or something like that? Yeah. Alabama played a full slate. Well, they played 10 with the 11 with the conference championship. They had more reps, so, but I think Alabama would have won that particular game anyway because they were just explosive offensively. But
both teams had players missing in that game.
Yeah, but like I said, I mean, I don't I can't get my hopes up for Alabama because this year, because of the 2 losses and period. That's. But I mean, I don't know the way this season's gone, Mark. I don't know what the committee might think about. Now, I'm afraid, though, on one aspect, though, they're even tired of seeing Alabama in the playoffs. However, they're thinking dollar bills. So, but both teams draw a good crowd, so I don't think that would have a play. So, really, with the 1 loss, you're right. The only hope Alabama may have is they look at that loss being at home as just a crazy loss at the wrong time of the year. I don't hold my breath on it. I look for Ohio State to be 5, to be honest with you, and Alabama 6. And the only way Alabama gets in is if Ohio State says they'd rather not go. But either way, I think it's going to be a good playoffs this year. I hope, teams have to understand how to play Georgia. Georgia has the secret sauce right now, Mark. They really, you have to know how to attack that defense. That defense, and the way to do it is you have to be able to throw the ball deep. And I think that's where Ohio State comes in. You got to throw it deep. I don't think Michigan has the capability. I don't think TCU. Well, I don't know about TCU. Really, I can't even speak about TCU because I haven't watched a single ball game by them. I've kept up with their scores. I've watched a few highlights. I don't know how talented they are on offense nor defense, but apparently they're not bad, Mark, because they're undefeated and they've found ways to win every week in and week out. So that, sometimes a group of guys like that have that magic, and they may be the ones, but if anyone's going to beat Georgia, it will be Ohio State, even above Michigan. And I know that sounds crazy because Michigan beat Ohio State. But I won't keep you, Mark. I've got interrupted real quick. But
Hey, man.
yeah, but that's my take on it. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it. That there could be a chance with Alabama, maybe not. Who knows? They
All right.
project us. They project us to play Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl. So who knows what kind of game that might turn out to be? But
Probably not much of one. All right, Cadillac. We appreciate it.
all right,
Have a good night.
take care, bud.
All right, let's keep it moving here. We got until 9, so let's move it through. We got Tiger Paw Craven on. Look at this.
Hey, what's up? What's up, Mark? How you doing, man?
Doing well. What's going on?
Still trying to absorb the loss that we took this weekend against South Carolina. I'm sure you've seen me and Jordan and DeAndre's post-game thoughts on the game. And I didn't know exactly where to start, but I knew that it was not a game that we should have lost. It was not a game that was lost by anybody other than mainly the coaching staff, and then the receivers and DJ as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of blame to go around for Clemson right now. And honestly, if I'm being honest, Mark, I'd have to say that Clemson's at a crossroads right now. Clemson's at a true crossroads. Dabo Swinney is at a true crossroads for the program. And we talked about it. Me and Jordan talked about it in length on the if people want to go back and watch the post-game reaction that we did. We talked about it in length, and some of the people in the comment section of that video got the wrong idea, thinking that, we were like, oh, Dabo Swinney's done and all this sort of stuff. And that's not what we were saying. But Dabo Swinney is not above criticism. This coaching staff is not above criticism. And I think me and Jordan came to the same conclusion that the current Clemson offensive coaching staff, as currently constructed, cannot get the job done. That's our opinion. You can take it or leave it. You can disagree with it, agree with it. It doesn't really matter, honestly. That's just our opinion as fans. We do not think this current Clemson offensive coaching staff can get the job done because I think they've proven all year that they can't get the job done. And I think Dabo Swinney has to take a long look in the mirror. He has to understand where Clemson is, where Clemson has been, and understand how to move forward. And I think that will entail, if he's being honest with himself, I think that will entail some changes in this coaching staff, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And that's just my opinion. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure you saw the game, Mark, and I'm sure you have your thoughts on it as well. But that was kind of my thoughts heading out of the game,
Well, I was pretty locked in on this Ohio State-Michigan game at the same time. I had Clemson and South Carolina on a screen, so I was keeping an eye on it. I can't really say that when I do that, I've got a great opinion on game management and play calling and strategy and all that other business. I know that there were special teams gaffes. I know that there were a couple of long plays downfield where some, a couple corners got torched. And I know that I saw DJ's line at like 9 for 29. And I've seen him play enough to know, but I've also seen these wide receivers over the last 2 seasons play enough that it's neither his complete fault nor theirs. It's been both.
Yeah, it has been both at Clemson, but the thing that I keep going back to is it's a coaching deficiency. Clemson used to be one of the elite programs when it came to receivers in college football. Hands down, Clemson used to
Absolutely.
be one of the most elite programs when it came to receivers, and we are not that right now.
Yeah.
And you can say, oh, they've missed on some of the guys that they've recruited. Well, again, that falls on the coaching staff. Oh, they've underdeveloped the receivers that they've brought on. Oh, well, again, that falls on the coaching staff. Play calling has been a huge issue for the past 2 seasons with Clemson, both last year with Tony Elliott and this year with Brandon Streeter. I can't tell a big difference in the play calling other than a few games. The tight ends have been a key point for the offense, but we keep not making the tight ends a part of the game plan, and then we keep dismissing the running game when we should not dismiss the running game. We did it against LSU in the national title game. We've done it this year several times with Brandon Streeter at the helm. So, in my opinion, there needs to be wholesale changes in the Clemson scheme and the Clemson philosophy on offense. That's just my opinion. I know there's a lot of people out there that will disagree with that. I know there's a lot of people out there that will agree with that. But at the end of the day, I don't think currently constructed the Clemson offensive staff can get the job done. They do not seem to be able to tailor the offense to the players and the skills that they have currently on the roster. And if you cannot adapt and call plays for the players that you currently have, then what good are you as an offensive play caller? I mean, that's just my opinion. I think Dabo Swinney needs to move on from Brandon Streeter. I don't think Brandon Streeter should have ever had the job. I think Clemson needs an outside voice to get a new perspective, a new flavor, whatever you want to call it. They need a new identity on offense. We've been running this offense for a very long time, and it worked for a very long time. But as we all know, as college football fans, college football is forever evolving. It is forever changing, and you have to change with it. I think Dabo Swinney needs to get off of his high horse with the transfer portal. I think he needs to look to the transfer portal to better his wide receiver unit. I think he needs to look to the national landscape when it comes to offensive scheme. He needs to get somebody in here with a fresh set of eyes on this Clemson offense. And I don't think it's all on Dabo. I don't think it's all on Brandon Streeter. I think it's on Dabo Swinney as well. And with that said, I'm not saying Dabo Swinney is not the coach for Clemson. Look, I believe in Dabo Swinney. He has built an elite college football program. Nobody would say any different about Dabo Swinney. But sometimes when you get to the top and you stay there for so long, you become complacent and you become stubborn in your ways, and you start to think that this is always going to work, right? And sometimes, college football can pass you by because it is an ever-changing sport.
Sure. Right, Tiger Paw.
Nick Saban did it, back when he
Absolutely.
brought on.
All right, Tiger Paw. Appreciate you being here. We need to move it along.
Thank you.
Thanks for jumping on. I appreciate it. You have a good night.
You too.
Got 5 callers, and we've got 19 minutes. You guys let me know if there are any pairs of you that would like to jump on at the same time. We got Ben. Ben, what's going on?
I'm sad, Mark.
You finally back in this country with us?
Yeah, can you cheer me up? I'm kind of sad.
What do I need to cheer you up about? That Civil War?
Yeah. The Beavers are being mean to me in the comments.
Well,
yeah.
you can be mean to them a whole lot more than they can be mean to
Oh,
you. So they're just taking advantage of, this year.
No, one scoop is timing out J.K. Marshall, the Beaver guy.
Oh boy. All right. Uh-oh. What's going on?
Not much. I don't know. No, it was just he just put up a Beaver thing. Probably a mistake. Oh man, don't worry. I'm feeling you, Mark. It was a rough weekend. It was a rough weekend for both of us.
There, but I'll put that up there for you.
Oh, that makes me happy. It was a rough weekend for both of us.
Absolutely, it was, and I was in and out of your game. I say this every year. Say this every week. Shoot, that Oregon State game. I got to see that game, but there's way too many good 3:30 games. But how'd they run the ball down your throats there the last few drives? Just
as I said, everything that could go wrong in this game went wrong. Run defense, non-existent. Special teams, all of a sudden, just absolute disaster. That pointed them 10 points easily. Just awful. There's no explanation or excuse for it. It happened. I mean, it's how it goes. That's why you play the game, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, I'm not going to make you feel any better or worse, I guess. It doesn't matter that I did pick Oregon State to win the game.
That makes me feel awful, Mark. I thought we were friends. I thought we were cool. What the hell? No. I picked Michigan to win, so I hate to say that.
Well, there you go. Touché.
It's like I did pick Michigan, so which in the first half I looked stupid picking that because I thought, man, they can't run at all. I thought Ohio State would change it up in the second half, and didn't happen. I mean, again, you play the games for a reason, and it sucks no matter what.
Yeah, well, there will be better days for Dan Lanning and not Kenny Dillingham, of course, but
that. What do you think of Dillingham? I mean, because I think 2 months ago, Dillingham name came up for Arizona State randomly, kind of like off the wall, so to say.
Yeah.
What do you think now? It just kind of came out of the blue, like, oh, he took ASU job. Like, it seems kind of premature. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know that he was that highly considered. I didn't know that he had proven that much. But if you really look through college football hires, it doesn't take much. It just takes like one hot streak for somebody like a Mel Tucker or somebody like that to gain attention.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, I'm assuming that they didn't pay him like Michigan State did for Mel Tucker, obviously, not that type of money, obviously. But I think they saw with Lanning and then a bunch of other staffs, they saw a young guy with energy and went, we need that. Outside of Herm Edwards. So they went like complete opposite of what they had.
Yeah, they went with a young guy. So that's sweet. I don't know if it's popped up. Lesser Ben says pity party fund for you and me. Oh, that's so sweet. I'll take it.
I guess he's technically the superior Ben right now. I'll give him that. I'll give him that title for now.
Ben is waiting in the wings, actually.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I don't want to compete with that. He has his winning day. We got to give him that moment. Well, last thing, Mark, what David Shaw resigning.
Yeah.
I talked with Tony last night about it, and I saw his viewpoint of it because it came as a surprise to me when I saw the news yesterday. When I literally am back in the U.S. and I checked scores, and I was like, oh, where does Stanford go for a coach? I mean, that's not an easy gig.
It's not an easy gig, but at the same time, for a good 8 to 10 years, they were just about as good as anybody.
Oh, yeah, not in the sense of like they can't be a good team, but like coaching and recruiting wise, it's not a good gig in that sense, like, like somewhere Northwestern you got to bring people into the program. And I've heard Stanford is going to change some of their rules, apparently.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to.
But where does Stanford go from here?
Well, they go where most teams in their situation should go, and they should go for the best and the brightest minds on the G5 level.
There was a great quote, little post on the Discord. You probably didn't see it, Mark, earlier. They had Urban Meyer with the Stanford logo. I was like, oh Christ, Stanford would never go there.
Yeah, they wouldn't take him. They wouldn't take him, and he wouldn't go there. Neither one. He's not going there. He can't recruit 5 stars to Stanford.
Yeah, that would be the opposite of David Shaw, Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
And G-Dog forever. I will if Mark signs a contract for heavy endorsement fees.
Heavy endorsement fees. We can make that contingent on views. We can, if I make money, you make money, kind of thing.
Every show, Mark. Every show. It has to be the intro, and I get like 2%. That's nothing. That's coins for use.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, Ty Guy's in the chat too. Loved hanging out with Ty Guy in Mexico City. That was fun. His wife is crazy.
Oh wow! You and Tide Guy.
That's crazy. I have photos. I'll post them in Discord later. I'll send them to you an email just for the hell of it, and you'll be like, "Oh Christ!" All right, Mark. Have a good one, and I'm gonna get over the sadness.
There will be better days. It'll get a little easier every day.
It will be. Hell of a season, though.
Yeah. All right, Ben. Thanks, man. All right, folks. Now we're down to 11 minutes, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Who can we get in together here? Nobody's saying anything. Okay, so Ben's next. What's going on, Ben?
Yeah, bring someone on in with me. Who do we got left? Who do we got?
We got the reel. There you go.
Sure, that's great. Oh man.
Here we go again.
Real once again. Maybe this was a bad idea, Mark.
Yeah.
No, I'm just gonna keep it short. How hard was it for you to put Georgia over Michigan or make that decision?
Extremely hard. That was razor close. I still think that Georgia has a deeper list of quality wins.
Yep.
Michigan has better wins at the top.
Yeah. That's what I was looking at. I was like, that was a tough one. I was wondering how that was that one of your closer ones?
Oh, between 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Absolutely. Georgia's been a slam dunk easy pick this entire season ever since week 1, but not this week. No.
Mark, what's the gap between 5, 6, and 7?
My gap between 5, 6, and 7, which is Ohio State, Alabama, and
Tennessee.
Tennessee, of course. Oh, Tennessee, Alabama. I've got Tennessee. I'm honoring that win. Well, actually, Alabama at this point has a better resume than Tennessee, but I want to honor that head-to-head. That gap is not much either, because I do believe, as I told an earlier caller, that Alabama obviously has better losses than Ohio State's loss. They looked better. They performed better. They took it right down to the wire, but LSU is showing some serious wrinkles, and Ohio State did lose to what we think is the second best team in the country versus Alabama losing to, Tennessee's taking its hits. LSU is taking its hits. So on one hand, Ohio State's got a bunch better loss, but they lost by a lot more than Alabama losing on the last play of the game twice. Ohio State's wins are better right at the very top, but Alabama's got a longer list of good wins.
Right, but if you want to honor that head-to-head, you would have to put Tennessee ahead of Alabama, right?
Yeah.
if they have the same record. So if you were to put Alabama ahead of Ohio State, I would assume you would have to put Tennessee ahead of Ohio State as well.
Yeah. True.
And, if the committee does do this on Tuesday, Mark, and Tennessee and Alabama are both ahead of Ohio State, and TCU loses to Kansas State, and USC loses to Utah, Mark, Tennessee and Alabama could be the 3 and 4. And you know what that means, Mark?
Oh, no. Here we go.
The 3-team SEC scenario still has a small chance of happening.
Oh, my word.
Okay, so one thing, do you think if Michigan loses that there is a chance that they're
I
out
think
of
Michigan's
playoffs?
in regardless of what happens.
Same thing with Georgia.
Same thing with Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're looking oh man, I think it's a stretch for for anything like that to happen.
Stretch is not the right word.
I kind of want to go along with you just for the chaos it would bring in the media, but I just don't see it happening. With your scenario, man.
If LSU didn't lose to Texas A&M, I think there would be a much more likelihood of it actually happening.
Sure.
But with LSU and not being a top 10 team, going to be around probably 15.
Yeah, they've killed some resumes.
Right. And that really hurts Tennessee and Alabama, in my opinion.
Yeah. I am just not a fan of TCU and USC winning for two different reasons. The one I will mention here would be that I want this to be a tough decision. And shoot fire, we're at this was so chaotic with so many different possibilities. And now if USC and TCU win, it's just cut and dry. There it is. It's an easy call.
The two things I would actually like to see happen would be great for me is either USC going in and us playing USC for the Natty, Michigan playing USC, or OSU getting in, beating Georgia, and then playing OSU for the Natty, because that would be epic too. That would be epic. I would love it. I mean, it would to me as a Michigan fan, it would bring the best game of the century.
How would you feel about losing to Ohio State in the national championship game after winning?
I know it would. That would kill me after all the pokes I've made at you since we won, and then I don't know if I could show my face around here anymore. But I would love to beat them. But I would love to beat them twice in 1 year. It would be awesome.
It's interesting because I think people want to beat their biggest rivals on the biggest stage. But if you lose that game, it doesn't matter. I know that next year the game matters, but they could say, well, we just beat you in the national championship last year. Like, they're going to always have that trump card.
Yeah, I know. It would be horrible. That would be horrible. But just think, if we did it, if we had that trump card, it would be the trump card to have. And I would love that. You could say all you want about beating us as much as you did the last few years, but just having that, I think that would make up for all of it.
Right. And, I do a little bit of trolling with the 3-team SEC scenario, but in my opinion, okay, TCU should be in regardless of what happens.
Even if they lose?
Even if they lose. And here's why. TCU should not be punished for playing an extra game that other teams don't have to.
Okay.
I don't see why, even if they lose by 40.
No, if they lose by 40,
they should be in.
Stories. But I was on board with you until you said 40.
Yeah. Okay, maybe that's an exaggeration, but you get even if they get blown out by like 21, 28 points, I think TCU should still get it.
You're not going to simply measure the resumes between Ohio State and TCU, or Ohio State, Alabama, and TCU.
No.
Really?
Because it would have to be hypothetical, like
championship game. You're not even going to look at the two resumes.
No, I wouldn't. I just don't. I think having to play the extra game is only a plus. It should only be viewed as a plus and not a minus. Okay. That's the way I look at it.
I can see like, so I can't see TCU's schedule being so bad versus Ohio State's, Ohio State's, Alabama's, or Tennessee's, to merit one of their loss. Maybe Ohio State. I could see maybe Ohio State getting in because that's Ohio State lost to Michigan. And Ohio State, I think, had probably I don't know, their record's kind of comparable as far as their schedule is kind of comparable. You think Notre Dame and Penn State, but TCU's got a lot. You think probably more of a higher end, lower tier wins.
I think TCU has a lot more depth than Ohio State currently.
So I could see Ohio State overtaking TCU if TCU loses, but I couldn't see Alabama.
I don't think they should.
Justifiably.
Yeah, I understand the arguments. I just don't agree with them.
TCU has defeated 4 Power 5 teams with winning records. Ohio State has defeated 4 Power 5 teams with winning records. The TCU wins are Kansas State, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma State. Ohio State's are Penn State, Notre Dame, Maryland, and Iowa.
So yeah,
I gotta lean Ohio State.
Gotta go with.
Do you know what TCU's strength of record is versus Ohio State?
No.
TCU is number 1.
They're number 1?
They are number 1.
Record is number 1?
TCU is number 1.
Okay, somebody needs to take apart that formula.
And, that's one of the things I'm pretty sure the committee uses is strength of record.
Yeah, I would love to know what TCU's opponents, all their opponents are 72-70, and Ohio State, all their opponents are 74-70. TCU's Power 5 opponents are 59-60. Ohio State's are 64-56.
Okay. And TCU's 1, Michigan's 2, Georgia's 3, Ohio State's 4, Alabama's 5.
Okay.
That's the strength of record.
Yeah, Ohio State probably dipped a lot in game control against Michigan, I guess.
Okay, well, hey, Mark, I'm going to let the other guys get in.
Thanks,
I appreciate the time. All right,
Appreciate
you guys
it.
have a good one. Good night.
Yeah, have a good night, Mark Rogers. Good luck to Utah and USC, and fight on to the LBC, Tim and Tony.
Thanks to Real. All right, Erica, thank you so much for the super chat contribution right there. I'd like to hear your take on Cade McNamara. I believe I gave that earlier, but basically strong quarterback, good decision maker. He's mobile. He's not got an NFL future in regards to actually playing in the NFL. He could hold a clipboard possibly, and he would be a great addition for Iowa. He's a plug-and-play player. He's got experience in big games and certainly is a winner and a capable leader and field general. And yes, he would be a great upgrade for Iowa football. Absolutely. All right, we got Brian. How you doing, Brian?
Doing good, man. Did I hear DeReal say TCU's deeper than Ohio State? I must have misheard that, but I could have sworn I heard that.
Higher strength of record. He said that they've got a deeper schedule.
Okay, I was about to say. That would be crazy. I think it was an Alabama fan a little earlier. I can't remember exactly what he said Ohio State, he feels, is the only team that could beat Georgia. I mean, Georgia and Michigan are very similar teams, and if Michigan out physical them, I can't see them having better results against Georgia.
Yeah, it's hard for me to forget what I saw Georgia do to Michigan, although they're 2 separate teams, 2 separate years, and it's going to be a different situation. And I saw J.J. McCarthy come into the game late and be able to move the ball a little bit and do some things with his legs. So he's just a significant upgrade over Cade McNamara. That's one thing. And they've got one of the best centers in the country now, who's a big upgrade there. Michigan's a better football team this year. No doubt.
Yeah, 100%. Watching that Jim Knowles defense was giving me PTSD flashbacks of watching Don Brown's defense
Yeah.
in 2018 and 2019. I don't know how you feel about that, but
Well, I feel that he made a decision that worked for a while, but when you make it through a half and your defense dominated the game except for 2 plays, you need to know your personnel. And the corner, they had one corner, Cam Brown, who whiffed on a tackle. Otherwise, he brings him down and it's an 8-yard gain and they get off the field. And then the other one, obviously, got completely screwed into the ground and lost. And so it's not just about scheming a defense. It's about, we always think about scheming the defense toward what kind of offense you're playing, but you also have to scheme the defense based on the capabilities of your personnel.
yeah, I guess that's why it gives me Don Brown vibes, because Don Brown had a very similar thing where he would, and it was also the lack of adjustments too, which gives me Don Brown vibes. So he would stick in the man defense, and he loved the blitz a lot. And when it wasn't working, he didn't really have a fallback to adjust to. It's very similar. I don't know if you agree with that,
You
but
got to make adjustments. Sure, you got to make adjustments. Well, Phil Parker at Iowa was one of the best defensive coordinators, maybe the best in the country, and he doesn't make adjustments. So
that's true. I guess that's what's so impressive about Michigan's defense is they're so versatile compared to what they were under Don Brown. But anyway, so I think it's pretty clear, and I don't think anyone can make an argument objectively that Georgia and Michigan aren't far away the 2 best teams in the country.
yeah, that's the way things look right now. Yeah, that's the way they look. Again, we'll never know because you don't get to see these teams play enough.
We might.
Well, no. I'm talking about getting to see different matchups multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
Getting to see USC play Michigan, or getting TCU to play Michigan, and see Tennessee play Michigan, and see Ohio State play Michigan again. And
Yeah, I think Ohio State can still get in, man. I mean, all they really need is, I don't know who was that. DeReal that said he'd have Ohio State, what, 7 or 6? What did he say?
yeah, he wants Alabama and Tennessee ahead of them.
I mean, you can't put them ahead of a 1-loss Ohio State. Like, that's
You can't. And if that committee's going to do that, then we're going to throw all sorts of fits.
I'll tell you what, though, USC might be a problem. I know the defense ain't that good, but
oh yeah,
Caleb Williams is that offense looks pretty tough to stop. And
oh yeah,
I don't know. They could be a problem in the playoff.
Yeah, they could be. They could be. Yeah.
All right, man.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Yeah, USC would want to get that Eric Gentry back because he's a difference maker on their defense and makes them somewhat respectable on that side of the ball. Chris is going to finish this up for the night. Hey, Chris.
Save the best for last, Mark.
That's what we keep doing here.
Let's make it a habit.
You can do that. What you got?
Oh, okay. What would you, I mean, I'll let you pick the topic, I guess, unless, what I was going to kind of talk about, though, unless there's something else you'd rather discuss. I had a discussion with we just kind of through chat is all it really was, but we both kind of came to the conclusion that maybe the reason they took Utah was, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that he came to the same conclusion I did, but I'm thinking it might give the Pac-12 the best chance of getting another team in the playoff. I don't know if you feel the same way about it, but how good Utah was, and I don't know that Washington doesn't seem to impress people quite as much as Utah. I don't know if you feel the same way, and then the other thing I noticed, Washington beat Oregon, so I think that probably, or did they? Maybe they didn't. No, yeah, did they beat Oregon? I don't know. Anyway, I guess Oregon wasn't really seriously considered, but I don't know if that's fair or not. I don't know that I understand how
it has nothing to do with who's being considered. They have a set guidelines as to how the Pac-12 championship game is determined.
I'm not sure.
They don't have people selecting it. They don't. It's not like the playoff.
I don't know that it's completely transparent, though, is it? I mean, that's what we were trying to kind of figure out. And the only thing that that we could kind of tell was, I guess, kind of like what you were doing with the other teams comparing their resumes and all that. I guess it put kind of Washington at a disadvantage just because I don't know if it's the caliber of teams they got beat by, but Arizona State, I guess, wasn't very good. And so that probably was maybe a contributing factor. But I don't know. I think, I guess if it had been up to me, and not that it should be, but, I would have been more inclined, I think, to want to see maybe somebody else try to get a chance at USC rather than Utah, since Utah, I mean, I understand why they picked Utah, but I'm not sure. I guess I'm still kind of confused, Mark, about why they need, or how they go about, you say the top two teams. Well, I think it doesn't, I don't know that it's as clear as, okay, these are the top two. I mean, maybe it is to somebody else like you, but to me, it's like, I have no idea.
You're talking about in the Pac-12.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have at least three, maybe even more that could probably make a challenge, I guess, if given the chance. I don't know how they decide who goes and who doesn't. Do you understand it? Because I don't.
Well, I understand it just because I'm reading it. So USC's number one, they're 8-1, so they obviously have one spot. And then there's a three-way tie for second place between Utah, Oregon, and Washington at 7-2.
Okay.
Well, it says right here, tiebreaker rules, 3 or more teams tied. Number one, head-to-head, best cumulative winning percentage in games among the tied teams. Meaning if one of the three beat the other two, then they're in. But if they all just won against each other, then you got to go to the second one, which is winning percentage against all common conference opponents. That's what I stated earlier. Without looking at this is basically the standard that most conferences in leagues use.
Did that actually fall Utah's way, though? I mean, that's where I'm not sure.
Well, it must, because they're going to the championship game.
Well, that's what I wasn't sure about, and it didn't really seem like it was that clear to me, but maybe it's clear to you.
Well, all you have to do is go through these tie-breaking rules, and there you go. You can. Well, I'm not going to sit here and go through.
No.
I'm assuming that if these are the Pac-12 tie-breaking rules, and Utah is going to the Pac-12 championship game, then they went through their rules, and that's how Utah is going to Las Vegas this weekend.
Well, I don't know, Mark. Again, I'm just, maybe I'm being a little bit too critical of it, but I kind of feel like Washington's, if maybe unless Washington doesn't want to be there, I kind of think it's maybe not fair to give Washington a chance when we've already seen what Utah can do. I know the chances are probably better, maybe that Utah might win. So maybe from that attitude, maybe it's actually a good thing. But I don't know. I guess maybe I'm still not for sure that it's being decided the right way. But that's just not that it really matters. But that's what I'm not sure about.
It's all right there.
Okay. The other thing I was going to ask you, I did you can look at it if you want. It's I put it on your. It's my proficiency ratings. Yeah. Anyway. One thing that I found, it's not something that I'm not promoting it, but, my top 25 actually included Boise State Air Force, Central Florida, Cincinnati, and Tulane. I don't know if you had any of those teams besides Tulane in there. I'm not necessarily saying that you're not weighing teams correctly, but I had Air Force at 25, Boise State at 24, Central Florida at 18, Cincinnati at 19, and then I had Tulane. To me, this is the interesting part. I had Kansas State at 12 and Tulane at 11, and that to me that makes sense because Tulane actually beat Kansas State. And so, and you don't have Tulane ahead of Kansas State, and I was just curious if you have is there a basis for maybe not including Tulane a little bit higher on the ladder there?
Yeah. So Tulane's 10-2, Kansas State's 9-3. Tulane won the game between the two, and even if Tulane was, let's say, 9-3, what I believe is my intent is to honor head-to-head victories. So that's what I would like to do. However, in doing so, you impact the rankings of a whole lot of other teams. There are other teams that have much better resumes than Tulane, and therefore I've gotten caught into a situation where you can't honor head-to-head all the time because of you're not ranking. If Kansas State and Tulane were the only two teams in America that I was ranking, I would rank Tulane number 1, and Kansas State number 2, because they beat them head to head and they've got a better record. However, they're not the only 2 teams that are ranked, and therefore, ranking Tulane that high impacts a lot of other rankings that are not correct.
Well, again, this is just for whatever it's worth. I mean, I think I've spent a fair amount of time trying to get the right information into the calculator that I use, but the fact Tulane's ahead of Kansas State's mostly just, it's not like I planned it that way, but to me, it kind of tells me that I might have a kind of some idea about. So I think, I'm not trying to accuse you, but I think you're underrepresenting maybe of some of the G5 teams, because this is like I said, this whole list is on your top 25. That makes sense. This last week we can. So there's other teams actually kind of closing in on it too. But if we just talk to 25, I have Air Force and Boise State right at the top 25 there. And the other thing was the person that said North Carolina shouldn't be in there. According to my calculations, North Carolina still should be in the top 25. I don't have North Carolina State in the top 25, and I don't have Notre Dame in the top 25. But I have Cincinnati where you put Notre Dame, and I have Central Florida where you put South Carolina. And again, that's just, I'm not saying that you're wrong and I'm right. I'm just saying that's where I have them. And and actually, other than that, actually, there's not a whole lot of difference, I think. I mean, there's difference in position, but the general, what do you want to call it? The general way that it's put together is close, I guess. But like I said, you don't include, you're not including some teams I think that maybe deserve to be there. That's all I'm trying to tell you.
Well,
and that's from my opinion.
Sure. As we've discussed in the past, I just believe, and I think that this can be verified easily, that there is a large gap between the Power 5 and the Group of 5.
Well, and I know you're not wrong about that, but I don't know if it's as big as I don't know that it's quite as big as you're trying to tell me it is, but I'm not saying that you're wrong either, because I know what you're trying to tell me. But there was a couple of, well, go ahead.
So for example, Air Force being at 9-3 with losses to Wyoming, Utah State, and Boise State, and only playing one Power 5 team, and that was the worst. They are by far the worst team, Colorado, in the Power 5, worse than most Group of 5 teams, actually, or maybe a portion of them. Like, I don't know how you can justify that 9-3 record over a lot of 8-4 records of teams like Mississippi State playing in the SEC.
No, and I'm not even trying to say that you're wrong and I'm right. I'm just saying, after I crunch the numbers, that's what the numbers tell me. I'm not telling the numbers; they're telling me this. But so I might be doing it wrong. But oh yeah, the other thing I was going to add, somebody suggested that if Texas Christian didn't win, that they're still in. I don't think that's true at all. If they lose, they're out. That's just, I think it's that simple. I don't think they advance if they lose. That's just, you can take it for whatever it's worth. But no, I don't think they lose, they're out. Drill MVP is wrong. He thinks they're in if they lose. Well, nobody's right or wrong.
Yeah, that comes down to a committee's selection.
No, he's wrong. If they lose, they're out. And then the other thing is, I think Ohio State might.
Time out, Chris. You understand that a committee's going to make a selection on this. Like, there's no right or wrong until they make that selection. Do you understand my point?
No. I think they don't have any. I don't think they have wiggle room there. I think if they lose, Alabama would probably pass them at that point, almost for certain. And then the other thing is, I'm not for sure that Ohio State might not still be in it.
I think they would be.
No, I mean right now, as it is right now. I'm not.
Right now?
Yeah.
No. For as much as I would love to say that you're right, that would be phenomenal. How do you get Ohio State in the playoff right now?
We'll watch the rankings together, Mark, but I would be very surprised if they put Southern California ahead of Ohio State. I think Ohio State's still in it. That's, and you can just take my opinion for whatever it's worth, but I don't think USC has done enough to really move ahead of Ohio State. And so I think Ohio State's probably still in it. The other ones that are kind of closing in on it are Alabama, Penn State, Tennessee. And then from there on, of course, you have these other teams that might not even be there, but and I have Clemson, Washington, Tulane, Louisiana, or I'm sorry, Kansas State, Utah. Anyway.
Can you give me your top 10 right now?
I already did. Oh, my top 10, Georgia, Michigan, Texas Christian, Ohio State, Southern California, Alabama, Penn State, Tennessee, Clemson, and Washington. That's why I was confused why Washington wasn't, because they're in my top 10.
So once USC, if they in fact defeat Utah, you don't know if they would move into your top 4 or
Well,
not.
I think at that point they probably do. But you know, the real MVP was making it sound like Texas Christian can lose. I don't think they can. I think they're not high enough on there to where they can. Georgia could probably lose and still go. That could probably be.
But unless I'm missing something, Chris, you said that Ohio State's going to make the playoffs regardless, but then you just admitted that while USC is behind them in your rankings, if they win over Utah, then they're going to pass Ohio State in your rankings.
Yeah.
So that's kind of null and void because they have to win. If they lose, they're out. If they win, then you're on board with everybody else and in saying USC is going to be in and should be in.
Well, I guess it's got a caveat associated, but I guess as we are right now, if they had to put it together on the spur of the moment for this, like let's say something like COVID happened, you know what I mean, and they couldn't play a championship game, I think Ohio State might advance. You know, that's without me being involved, obviously, but I don't think that USC's done enough to really pass Ohio State. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
And you know, just take it for whatever it's worth. I mean, I'm usually wrong, so. But no, I don't think Texas Christian, they can't afford a loss. That's a lie. That's not even close to being true. They have to win.
Well, I appreciate your rankings.
All right, thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye.
Georgia Reload. Crystal Crown will stay at home. It is well with my soul. You are probably right. Most people would agree with you until we see otherwise. But thank goodness we've got some semblance of a playoff. It's an invitational, and we will have 4 of the best teams in the country. I don't know. Really, nobody knows if they are the 4 best, but hopefully they will be the 4 that earned it and will play in the national semifinals. I kind of think that the 4 best teams in the I don't know who the 4 best teams in the country are. I think I got a pretty good read on the 5 best teams in the country. The 5 best, I believe, are Georgia, Michigan, USC, Ohio State. Who did I miss? Georgia, Michigan, in some order, USC, Ohio State, Alabama. Those, I believe, are the 5 best teams in the country. But, of course, TCU is playing for a championship and should be in the playoff if they win. If they lose, I'd like to see resumes compared. All right. Appreciate everybody being here at 11 Eastern. That is only an hour and a half from now. We will be on with Matt Zemek on USC Live over on our USC channel. So check us out. Join the conversation in an hour and a half on the USC channel. And otherwise, we will be posting all sorts of previews. Look at this. Look at this little comparison we got working here. USC, TCU, Ohio State. Be looking out for that video. It will be on the way right here at the Voice of College Football, plus all sorts of championship previews. See you in 90.